What I would see most often, especially in male dentists, is that they would ultimately feel trapped by their lifestyle. They've created a really successful practice. They've created a really nice lifestyle for their family, and then also they're supporting their team members and having a thriving business. And they ultimately start to feel trapped by what they created, meaning they don't feel as if they have the ability to step away from the chair or create a new way of earning income. So there's the three I's. Is this conversation designed to influence somebody, to inform them, or to inspire them? Right. And so if you're not clear on the context and the energy behind what you want to communicate, it's not going to land. So if you're a doctor who's very fact based, maybe really, really methodical, maybe you don't have a strong suit in peopling, which a lot of doctors
Inspiring.
don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to have an inspiring team meeting and you get up there and you're just listing off metrics and it's really droney, you're not going to get the result that you're looking for.
Rob, was you're here with Brandi Marzolino. Did I say that right?
You did. Nice work.
Br- Brandi, you've been working with dentists for just over 15 years, coaching, consulting. But we were talking earlier about how you really focus in on helping them, get out of maybe a pit of stress that they're stuck in, or their mental health is suffering. And so we all know, or most people know in dentistry, that the toll on dentists, both mentally and physically, is significant. The average patient comes in saying, I don't really love coming to the dentist. I mean, that's this reality that dentists have to deal with, and their customers don't really want to be there, right? They have to be there in general. And obviously it's not always like that, but I want to just hear this high level summary from you in general. Like, what are the patterns you see of a doctor that's just kind of burnout, really stressed, their mental health is suffering? What are the patterns you're seeing with dentists? And then we'll talk about how you work with them. So we'll start with the problem. What are the patterns that you see?
Yeah, and thanks for having me on, Rob. And that's a great question. I love talking about this kind of stuff. And typically the problem that I see, there's a little bit of a difference between male and female dentists. What I would see most often, especially in male dentists, is that they would ultimately feel trapped by their lifestyle. They've created a really successful practice. They've created a really nice lifestyle for their family, and then also they're supporting their team members and having a thriving business. And they ultimately start to feel trapped by what they created, meaning they don't feel as if they have the ability to step away from the chair or create a new way of earning income. And they build a little bit of a resentment towards what they've created because they feel as if if they were to ever step away, it would have catastrophic effects on their
Yeah.
family, their lifestyle, the team, etc. So they have this chronic feeling of being trapped. And typically with women that I work with, they've followed the blueprint. They've created a really successful business. And they have a lot of grief and sadness and overall stress because they too are now realizing, hey, I followed this blueprint in order to be successful and I'm not happy. I don't feel
What
fulfilled.
what's the blueprint you speak of that women follow?
Yeah, the blueprint is the pathway to success. So we live in a society that's really around productivity and earning money. So the blueprint is go to school, go to dental school, push all the boundaries, break all the glass ceilings, go into, you too can be somebody that's the primary income earner of your family. You can have it all. This idea that you can have it all, you can go to school and reach for the stars and get all the degrees, build the business, be the business owner, be the mom, be the wife or partner, be all the things. And then all of a sudden they get to this point and they're exhausted, they're overwhelmed, they're not giving 100% to any one area of their life. They have mom guilt, they have partner guilt, they're stressed, they can't do the self-care that they want to give themselves. And they really struggle with that emotional burden of what they're sacrificing in order to run a successful business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can for sure see that. I personal opinion, I do think that women in general, when they have kids, there is an instinctive desire to take care of their kids.
Mhm.
And if they sacrifice that to an unhealthy degree, it for sure has an effect on a woman. I think men, obviously, if you're an absentee father, like, of course, there's an effect as well. But I think it's a little bit, it's a controversial topic, but
Mhm.
men and women are wired a little bit different as far as what triggers their stress and their guilt. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think from a big global umbrella perspective, they definitely have different, desires as far as what drives them typically. And again, this is just, using general stereotypes for sure.
Sure.
And I do think even for women that don't have kids, as they continue to navigate in their life, who women are in their 40s is much different than who they are in their 20s. And a lot of
Totally.
times that same drive, that same ambition that they leaned on in their 20s to get the success that they have isn't the same drive and ambition and desires they have in their 40s. And typically for men as well, they want to also enter into legacy work and share
Yeah.
what they now know. They have so much wisdom, and I mean women do too, obviously. And so it's this need and this desire to not drive and push as hard, and they're stuck in this model that's demanding they give the same level of output that they've always given. And so that's usually the conundrum that people, when I work with them at that stage in their career, and some people get to that stage earlier, in their mid 30s
Yeah.
sometimes.
As you were talking about, the feeling of being trapped in this, I've built up this practice and I've worked to this certain level and now my income has grown and my practice has grown, but now it's completely dependent on me showing up. Let's let's uh, let's suppose it's mainly me providing services. I might have a few associates, but I'm like the
Sure.
general provider. In a sense, dentistry could become like you're a really high value solopreneur where
Mm-hmm.
you've built this business that depends on you to be with patients and perform treatment. And if you take time off, then your income dramatically reduces. Just maybe share some more of your perspectives on this and how this high value income earning role that is dependent on this one person really does create a lot of stress.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of ways to where somebody can still generate the income and the revenue that they want, with associates and other partnerships and things like that. That can happen, and it works all the time. You see it happen quite often. I think there's other emotional burden though too, that I see quite often, which is when the primary owner doctor is away, the practice functions different. Operations are a little bit different. So
Yep.
I say it's kind of the age old thing, when the cat's away, the mice will play
Yep.
sort of
100%.
mentality. And associates, as amazing as they are and as hard as they work, teams often react differently to associates than they do when the owner doctor's there. And so there's also
Yeah.
this, if they don't have the proper systems and structures and, culture in place, when they do go away, they're enjoying their present moment perhaps with their family or friends or whomever they're with on their vacations, but there's a sinking feeling in the back of their mind. What am I going to come back into when I get back to the office? So I think there's that level of stress as well, that
Yeah.
they think they got it right, but they don't entirely, because they're still coming with this stress and paranoia. I think a lot of times too, and this fear that they're being taken advantage of, that people aren't doing what they're asking them to do when they're not around. Can they trust everybody as much as they think they can trust people? So there's often issues with like trust, general paranoia, fear. That, is this success going to last? Can I really step away as much as I want to, and the success can sustain itself for a long period of time? When's the other
Yeah.
shoe going to drop? There's those types of things that are going on internally.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And as you were talking, my mind was thinking on just the value of leadership and scaling your time. And if you're a solopreneur in any business, but we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
dentists, you cannot scale your time, meaning there's 24 hours a day and you get the same amount of time as everybody else. So you can work longer, you can work a 12-hour or 14-hour shift, but the law of diminishing returns starts to kick in, and that you will, if you're not leading other associates in your practice to perform treatment that you believe in,
Mm-hmm.
then you will hit a glass ceiling of earning,
Hmm.
And also that stress, there will be a direct correlation of your stress level with your earnings if you don't have any other associates performing treatment. If you were to flip that, and if you were to really focus on leadership and mentorship of associates, and you invested in associates to build a practice with multiple clinicians, that really, my view, is the only way to, quote, scale the value of your time, and to make more money without just simply working more hours, and
Right.
which fundamentally becomes a discussion around leadership and mentorship and coaching. And so tell me your thoughts and reaction to that way of thinking.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I think I often say many people that enter into leadership don't realize that they're also entering into a world of being a master communicator. And people think that, and as you and I discussed on a previous conversation, communication is probably the biggest downfall with most people, not just dentists, but across the board. Most people really, really struggle knowing how to communicate effectively. They think because the words are coming out of my mouth, you're receiving it just as I am intending you to receive it. And before even that, people getting really, really clear on what it is they want to communicate. And so I think that's very critical when we talk about leadership and entering into mentorship and guiding others down a path or journey that they desire to go into. It's even just showing up isn't being a leader. Being in the office isn't necessary. I know a lot of owners who are present in the office and their leaders, they have zero leadership. So how do we, and that's something that I work directly with clients on, is one, getting to the root of the desire that you want your business to look like. What is it you're really desiring? Because if we don't get clear on that, then you can't effectively communicate it, and then you can't create the business that you're looking for. And most people really struggle on finding out what their real desires are because they're too busy comparing themselves to everybody else and then taking their dreams and owning them as their own. And then it's not coming from a place of being all in or truly authentic because they're looking at, Dr. Smith up the street and how he's running his business and the technology he has and the service that he has and the associates he has and the neighborhood he lives in and all these things and going, well,
Yeah.
he looks really successful, so I should be doing what he's doing, you know?
Yeah.
And then that's where the disconnect comes in and the tension, internal tension and the discord. And it's just downhill from there as far as communication goes.
You made a point that I just have to echo, and that is the danger and folly of comparing yourselves to other people. So as a
Yeah.
dentist, so there's two paths to go down. You can find another dentist that's terrible, compare yourself to them, and feel pretty good about yourself,
True,
right?
true. Yeah.
And like I'm doing okay. Look at that guy or gal over there. They're a terrible
Hmm.
dentist, and they've got terrible reviews on Google, and they're constantly churning. Okay, great. Well, you didn't actually do anything good. You just found someone that's like worse than you. And then the other extreme is you look at other dentists that are just crushing it, right? They're doing
Hmm.
all these big cases and they're doing implants or doing ortho or the super GP or whatever they are. And you have this like jealousy and all that. But it's like, every human in life was dealt a different hand of cards, right?
Hmm.
Like your background, your upbringing, your neighborhood, your college, right? Your access to loan money, like your friends and your network, and like all these things, a lot of which you didn't choose. They were just handed to you. Like you didn't choose your parents, nor did I.
Hmm.
And maybe they were a blessing in your life and maybe they weren't. Anyways, all that to say, when you admire somebody and all the success they have, you have no idea how they got there,
Hmm.
and it can be depressing, right? And I just think it's really dangerous to compare yourself to other people because it can give you a false sense of pride or a false sense of depression. And I think
Yeah.
both are two bad outcomes of the same behavior.
Yes. Yeah. I totally agree. I know there's a million like little phrases for this: compare and despair, comparisons the thief of joy, all these types of things. And you're exactly right. You don't know the backstory. And I think one of the other, mental ego trips on this whole thing is we somehow think when we compare to people that look like they have it better, we think they're happier. And we think, that that sort of spiritual saying of like, somewhere over there my happiness lies. Like once I get to that thing, then I'll be happy, then I'll feel good. And we distort that. And if anything, we've seen time and time and time again, people that have had wild success, or what we would see from the outside as somebody who has it all, or whatever, have, end up, ending their life, or their entire life blows up in other ways, or you get to actually have a conversation with them behind closed doors, like I do with many successful people from the outside. And you hear how unhappy they are, and the things that they're trying to work through, and the struggles that they have, and the issues that they're constantly navigating through. And it doesn't mean that if you are very successful, you're miserable. But I always say everything is relative. People are always working through stuff. Always. Like it's a constant thing. So I think we very easily distort. And again, that's a societal construct as well. I mean, if we weren't, seduced by marketing, that if we only had this or this or this or this, I mean, that's why we buy stuff, I get it. I'm a consumer.
Yeah.
I buy stuff, I'm part of the matrix, but it's like, if we have the awareness about it, it helps ease the pain a little bit more.
Yeah. When you look at people, all you can assess is the shell, right? The beauty of their practice, or their revenue, or the way they look, or what kind of car they drive, or their house, or whatever. You have no idea what's going on in their heart. And it hit me as you were talking. Warren Buffett, the guy said a lot of really great things, but a guy of his wealth said that, his definition of success is the number of people in your life that you want to love you, that actually do love you, is the measure of success. Because someone might be like, you know what, if my wife and kids love me, I'm good. So that's maybe 5 people, right? But maybe someone else a little more social, right? But there's this idea of like, you have this sphere of people that you care about. How many of them genuinely love being around you? And that's the measure of success, according to Warren Buffett, a multi-billionaire.
Yeah. I really like that. I like that a lot. And I know it is kind of the human condition to chase validation and acceptance from the people we don't get it from. And then we don't pay attention or value what we already have, which is that love and support from the people close to us and the people that matter to us. And I remember, not that long ago, I was in a situation where I was really struggling, and this wasn't a client of mine, it was just somebody in the industry, and an adjacent industry, let's put it that way, that I didn't have a whole lot of respect for, right? And we knew each other, and we had conversations and stuff like that. And I always felt like I wanted this guy to be like, oh, you're so incredible, you're so amazing, thank you, in the back of my mind. And like most of us do, we want some sort of hit of validation. And one of my mentors said, Brandi, do you respect his opinion? And I said, actually, no, I don't. Because she's like, everything you've ever shared about this person, you don't really have a whole lot of respect for what he thinks and what he does. And I said, yeah. And I was completely blind to it. And she said, so why do you care so much whether he likes you or not?
Great point. It's a trap.
And it was so funny. And in that moment, I just let it go. And I'm like, you're right. Why am I trying to earn the approval of people that I don't really respect, when I do have the love and respect to the people that I value and that I cherish, and that their opinion does matter to me? And I think it's silly for us to say, I don't care what people think, because of course we do. We're humans, we're pack animals, we belong in community. If we didn't have each other, we'd die, so we do need some people to like us,
Yeah.
And it's just, what are we paying attention to? Yeah.
For sure. I mean, different people have different levels of need for that validation.
Yeah.
I think at some level, all of us want at least a little bit, for sure. So you had told me you do a lot of leadership coaching, and then, communication is a big topic. I want to dive into your perspectives on communication. I was thinking about this. There's written communication, there's verbal communication, and then there's communication by example, right? Like, I am communicating things to people around me without my words and without my writing, just by my actions, the way I treat people, my countenance, am I smiling? Am I, what's my tone and all that kind of stuff. Break down for me your perspectives on communication, why it's so important, and where people tend to make common mistakes and have, common misperceptions of good communication.
Yeah, I think, well, we'll get a little deep first. I think at the core of it, people don't think that they matter as much as they do. It's a
What
bit
do
of
you
a
mean by that?
yeah, I think it's a bit of a self-esteem issue. So a lot of doctors may come into an office and they don't realize, and I talk to a lot of my clients about this, they don't realize that as the check signer, as the boss, as like the primary doctor in the office, when they walk through that door, the whole team is like they know they're there, right?
Yeah.
And they don't see themselves that way. So they don't have, and it's not an ego thing. It's like a lot of times if people think that they're kind of invisible or nobody's paying attention or they don't really matter in the sense of like people are paying attention. Like you're a dad, you said, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So
Father
you're
3.
probably aware, being a dad, that your kids are paying attention to you when
Yeah.
you kind of maybe wish they wouldn't as much as they probably do.
Yeah.
And so they're mimicking behavior, right? And so when you come
Yeah.
into a room, it's probably a little bit different than when you're not there. And so it's having this awareness that you matter, you make a difference, and you can make a difference. Because even if you don't take your leadership seriously and you don't believe you can make a difference, you won't invest in your own leadership development because you have a disbelief that you can't make a difference in your own office. So I think it starts there as far as really understanding what's your role, what's the impact that you have in this business, what's the impact you have on yourself, with your family, et cetera, et cetera. So getting to the root of that, getting to the root of what your values are. I have some really awesome exercises that help clients walk through what their actual values are, not like, oh, I value integrity and high tech and, whatever. Like those are just like the cliche ones that everybody picks, but really getting to the root of your specific values and then embodying those values and showing up in the state and the condition of those values. Because I always use values as a really great indicator of where your mental, emotional, spiritual health is at any time. Because if you're acting outside of your values or you're violating your own values, it's a good indicator of where you're at,
Yeah.
and where you might need some support. I kind of think of values as like when you go bowling and they have those, things that protect the gutter.
Yeah.
I think of values as that, like you're kind of going in between every day in your life, but the values keep you held in, they keep you contained, they keep you true to who you are. So getting really clear on that. And then you start acting, you start being in a state of that beingness all the time. And that leads into the nonverbal communication. How are you showing up physically? Do you look put together? Are you showing up on time? If you're asking everyone else to show up on time, are you coming in on
Yes.
time?
Yes.
When somebody comes into your office, do you look up at them and acknowledge their existence? I have a lot of docs who, when they're in their office, on their phones, and they never look up from their phone when a team member comes in, it causes a level of intimidation, not feeling safe in the office because they feel like they're always bothering. And then they wonder,
Yep.
why doesn't anyone come to me? Why doesn't anyone tell me these important things? Well, you don't even look at them, literally, right?
Yeah.
If you're constantly rushing, if you're not showing up for critical meetings, if you say you're going to be there and then you back out at the last minute, if you treat the patients one way and then treat your staff another way, or if you show favoritism, right? And then, of course, there's also understanding the types of communication. Some people do really well in person, right? Some people do really well over email because they need to get their thoughts out. Forcing a communication style on somebody that doesn't receive it that way? Is there a way that you can work together to find a different type of communication style? These are all things that lead into that. But I think really doing some of that self-discovery first,
Yeah.
and then also the context of your communication. So there's the 3 I's. Is this conversation designed to influence somebody, to inform them, or to inspire them? Right. And so if you're not clear on the context and the energy behind what you want to communicate, it's not going to land. So if you're a doctor who's very fact based, maybe really, really methodical, maybe you don't have a strong suit in peopling, which a lot of doctors
Inspiring.
don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to have an inspiring team meeting and you get up there and you're just listing off metrics and it's really droney, you're not going to get the result that you're looking for. And then you're going to say, hey, why isn't my team inspired? Well, maybe you're not the person to deliver that message if you're not able to, if it's not really in your DNA, or can we train you to be more inspiring? Can we get you out of your own way so that you can be more motivating and inspiring? So there's a lot of that goes into it. And I think there's not enough time spent on really figuring out what makes me tick. I think I wrote something once, what makes me tick and what ticks me off. So I think if you get clear on those two things,
Yeah.
it really helps. Everyone's so busy. Everyone's just running through their day to day. It's like 100 miles an hour. No, very few people are taking time to pause and reflect and get really clear. And then everyone has whiplash. They're looking back at the last year, the last few years and going, what happened? How did this happen? Well, we kind of just went into it like a bulldozer. There wasn't any thought that was put into it. There wasn't any preparation. And I think those are really critical things too in trying to figure out how, why, and what you're communicating and when.
When you were giving the examples a minute ago about, being on your phone and being present, being on time, like the doctor themselves leading by example, every example you were giving is that doctor's interpersonal, connection and behavior in front of his staff members who he's holding to she's holding to a certain standard. And, there's this idea of like, hey, we need to write our values down and put them on the wall, which of course I would agree with that. However, I would say that the biggest and most influential thing that you can do in any leadership context, for sure a dentist in their practice, is to simply do this. Say, hey everyone, if you want to know how to treat people, copy me. If you want to know how to talk to people, copy me. You want to know how to treat employees, everything about my life, just copy it. And those are our values. That is actually a very intimidating thing to say out loud, but it's actually going to happen anyway. Because
I love that.
People will assess, what can I get away with, or how should we behave in this context? And they will assess what's valued or acceptable, or what's the bumpers, as you call in the bowling alley, based upon largely, I would submit, by the doctor's behavior, how they speak, how they treat people and all that, regardless of what's written on the wall. Like that might be one thing. That's maybe what you aspire to. But the behavior of the doctor becomes that's like the rubber hitting the road on what's going to shape the culture in that practice.
Yes, I love that. And I often say you can't lead a business if you can't lead your life. So I think people miss that as well, where they want to come in and they want to use their business as a way to, validate themselves, that they're a good person, they're contributing to society, they're doing great work, they've made it, they've done some good work. But the reality is, I think that's where there's a lot of disconnect, or there's a lot of discord with people when they sometimes make their way to me, is that idea of like, well, I have this, but I'm really struggling here, or I really am doing well here, but I'm really struggling here, because they're putting so much emphasis in this one thing to try to fill the emptiness that they have in this other thing. And it's like, can we have them both match? And it's not as hard as it sounds. It's just recontextualizing, digging in a little bit deeper to find out what are you seeking and what are you searching for in your business that you're trying to find self-worth in or validate yourself in. Because that's why I find too that people feel held hostage by their own business.
Yeah, I bet.
And it's the business they created.
They created their own prison, in a sense. I'm sure they feel that way. So
yeah.
Let's talk about
how do they fix that?
What do you do? So you meet with the doctor and you're going to start to do an assessment, and then you're going to, conclude some things, some of which are probably very normal and regular to you. And maybe you're still surprised from time to time. But then I know everyone's different, so I don't want to overgeneralize, but what are some of the standard or the common things you do for helping them take steps, like healthy steps towards stress reduction, towards better communication and leadership, and towards these big pillars that cause these issues that they need to deal with, like what are some of the practical steps that you take in working with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, one of my gifts is that I'm a fantastic listener. And it's not just that I'm listening to what's underneath what they're saying. I can really hear how they communicate things. I can hear the words that they're using. I can hear the tone that they're using. I can hear how quickly they brush over things. I can also hear what they avoid talking about. And so I'm really, really, really present.
You're looking for all the nonverbal cues telling you something that they're afraid to say with words.
And shockingly enough, a lot of our word folks out there will know people tell you a lot about themselves by the words that they actually use, right? So, and we all have this inner dialogue going, we all have this inner programming going, and it's the water in which we swim. We don't know any differently. So when we're communicating to somebody, we're just talking like it's any old day. But maybe to me, who doesn't have that internal programming, who doesn't have that inner dialogue, to me, it's, whoa, okay, this is a little bit different. This is unique. Why are you referencing your practice like this? Or, why do you speak about your spouse in this context? It sounds like you have a lot of anger. And these are things I'm keeping notes of as I'm going through these sessions. And so a lot of the early sessions is a lot of me listening and asking questions, because I think these are questions that most people don't get asked. And honestly, and this is unfortunate, most people don't have safe spaces to communicate openly and honestly and really transparently. And most people are putting on a mask, wherever they go. And to really get to their true self and to say what they're not saying, to say the most vulnerable things, to say the things they have the most shame around, that usually comes out pretty early on in the conversations, I think, because of the space I hold for people, but also my own story.
Right.
My vulnerability, what I'm willing to share, what I know about being human from my own experience or working with so many people, it opens up a really safe space for them. So the early conversations are a lot of that, because I'm really trying to get to the root of what it is they want. Because I did work in consulting for a while where we drove revenue, we drove production, we drove all the KPIs that you typically would hire a consultant for. But the results were always fleeting. They were never sustainable because they weren't fully bought in and it wasn't matching what they really wanted in their life. And so many people are afraid to say what they want.
It might not be another $10,000 a month, right? It might
No.
be some time freedom, right? Or
Yeah.
some stress reduction, or maybe they want to go to the gym 3 times a week and they just don't know how to make that happen. And so it sounds like
Or maybe they don't even
you're,
want to be a dentist anymore, Or
oh,
maybe
wow,
they
there's
don't
a
want
big
to
one.
or
Yeah.
maybe they don't want to live where they're living. Or maybe, or there's some fear that they have of being found out, because when you jump into leadership and you have 20, 30 team members looking up to you and aspiring to you and following you and trying to be like you, and you have some self-esteem thing going on where you don't feel like you're good enough, or you're so embarrassed by this one thing, or maybe financially you're not as sound as everyone thinks you are, so you feel like you're a fraud going in every day. I see that happen quite often. People think you have all this money and all this stuff and all this status, and the reality is you don't. And so everyone's trying to aspire and be like you, and you're the role model, and you feel like you're the only person in the world who, doesn't have as much money in the bank account as everybody thinks. Or maybe you recently made a bad investment and you're embarrassed about making a bad investment, like, oh, I did this terrible thing. Or maybe you did something in your marriage or relationship and you're ashamed of it, or whatever it is. These are the things that can kind of block somebody up to not have them show up fully. And so in the beginning, it's a lot of that. And we only go as far as the person's comfortable going. I'm not forcing anybody to reveal things they're not comfortable with, or if they're not there yet. But it's a lot of that kind of stuff. And then we get busy creating. It's a lot of okay, what do you actually want to have? And then we look at what they really truly want compared to what actually exists. And then we bridge that gap on how we can get there. And that includes how they're showing up as a leader, how they develop their team, and then also the systems and operations to put it all together.
Right, this is great. So you identify the real gaps
Yeah.
that are tied to their vulnerable desires, what are the common gaps that people want to bridge? Like, okay, I'm here and I want to get there. What are the common gaps that you see that people really want to grow and develop more of in their life?
Well, honestly, a lot of people want to work less.
Okay.
That's usually one of the
Don't we
bigger
all?
ones. I know.
Make more money, less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Oh, and they're also at a stage in their career where they feel like they put in the time and they know they have the maturity, the wisdom, and the resources to pull away a little bit, but they just don't know how to do it and they don't have the courage to do it. And they also don't know, their ego is so tied to being the producer, being that person that's chairside, right? So that's or being in the office all the time, that paranoia, that fear. If I go away for a certain amount of time, is everything going to fall apart? So that's a big one, is figuring out how they can maintain their current lifestyle and not work as much. And when I mean
So,
work, I mean in the office.
but let's hone in on that. So, what
Yeah.
you're saying is their current level of earnings is acceptable. What they really want is just less hours required of them in the clinic. Is that saying
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
properly?
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. That's a common one.
So, in general, instead of another big bump in revenue, what they're looking for is a bump in time, like time back to their life.
Yeah, their priorities have shifted. They want to have more time with their family. Maybe their bodies are getting a little bit more tired, or they're finally taking their health seriously. Because like I said, who we are in our 20s and early 30s is much different than when we start getting into our 40s and
Yeah.
50s. We want to really nurture ourselves a little bit differently. And so there's that. They also know they've acquired a lot of wisdom and they want to start passing it along. So I also
Yeah.
meet people who are at a stage in their career where they're like, hey, I know a lot of stuff and I'm just working with patients all day, or I feel like I'm dealing with the same practice issues day in and day out. How do I level up? How do I create something new and exciting for myself where I can now mentor people in a way that feels exciting? So I also see that where they want to start using all the skills they've acquired, through the last couple of decades, and they want to start giving it away, or what does that look like? So there's a lot of that, I would say, as well. Some people also come in with wanting to get their personal lives in order.
I
So
bet.
they're really successful at business and they're like, my wife doesn't like me so much. So like,
So they
my
hide it.
patients love me.
They're using business as a place to hide. But
Yeah.
before we
So
jump
they
into
want to
that,
like heal all that. Yeah.
I want to go back to the person wanting to add time back to their life. I think maybe almost every human would love to say, yeah, same amount of money, less effort, time put in. I would propose this, that the single greatest enabler of more time in your life is through leadership of other people who can do things without you. Would you agree
Yeah.
with that?
Yes. Yes.
And so then happily perform duties without you in the room and being dependent on you making every decision for them.
Correct. And they have to feel taken care of as well, because especially if you have associates or, other docs in the office, what I've seen in the past as well is if they feel as if they're running more of the business than you are without you there, and you're earning a big cut of their production, there starts to become this, well, why don't I just do this myself? They need to make sure that they see the value in belonging to your practice.
Yeah.
And I see that more and more too with associates, and why a lot of them are entering into the DSO space is they don't want to actually run a business. They don't really, they do see that running a dental business is a lot of work. You lose a lot of
Tons.
autonomy, right? You lose some of the perceived freedom that you think you'll have. But I do see a lot of younger associates being quite fine, being part of that office and not being the owner and not getting their full production. But I also think it's important to keep them inspired and motivated long term and keep their interest peaked and keep them curious and interested in the business, because, they may not stick around forever either. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Leading an associate dentist, I'm sure there's whole podcasts
Yeah.
on
We can do a
best
lot on that. Yeah.
practices for that. And
Absolutely.
yeah, that is, the associate has to be excited emotionally and financially being in your practice. And there's probably lots of discussion around that. But fundamentally, we will agree that if you want to unlock time in your life, it's really, you got to lead your way out of it in general, right? Like there's maybe some other
Yes.
things you can do to cast off some inefficient habits, or maybe just get rid of some obligations that aren't, helpful for you. And that's probably some easy wins. But leadership and leading other people is for sure critical. And one of my mentors, one of his things he told me many, many years ago is when someone says, well, I don't consider myself a leader. And if you boil it down
Mm,
to the fundamental essential requirement of being a leader is if one person looks to you as an example to follow, then you're a leader, whether you like it or not, right?
mm-hmm,
So if you have a child, you're a leader.
mm-hmm,
If you're a dentist in a practice, you are a leader, like full stop. You may not
mm-hmm.
like being a leader or get joy out of being a leader, but it is an inescapable reality that when people are looking to you as an example to follow, you're a leader.
100%. It takes investing in yourself to be a good leader, because the payout, the ROI on investing in yourself for leadership, personal development, developing your team is exponential compared to just ignoring the fact that, the team will just do what I say, I'll figure it out as I go, et cetera, et cetera. I think it can't be overstated the importance of developing yourself in that way versus just assuming it's all going to work out because you own the business, and maybe you'll learn here and there from your peers or some TikTok videos or a couple of articles you read online, but none of it is curated and customized for you. And I think that's where people get a little bit lost, especially in this information age. There's so many resources out there that can tell you how to do this one thing. But the issue is they're speaking to masses. They're not speaking to you, right? So if I was to sit with you, Rob, and really try to get underneath the hood of you and what makes you tick and what ticks you off and like what really drives you and what are you passionate about, it's going to be very different than if I sit down with, you know, Susie up the street, running her business, or Joe, down the road or whatever. It's not all the same. We're all the same, but we're all unique as well. And like you said early when we started this conversation, we all come from different backgrounds, different traumas, different situations that have happened to us, different circumstances, different schooling, different demographics. So many things have impacted us and who we are today. And I can't just blanket apply that to every single person. If we really want to
Sure.
take you from what got you here isn't going to get you there,
Yeah.
you know? And yes, in the early stages of business, yeah, there's easy blueprints to follow. There's
Just work your butt off.
tried
Show up
and
and work
true
hard.
stuff. Yeah, there's tried and true stuff that works. Yes, props to all the people out there that, have written the books and have come before us. I'm always so grateful for my teachers and my mentors and the people that do all that work, 1,000%. But there's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing greater than having somebody that's customizing something for you and really learning about you if you want to become the leader that you desire to be. And like we said, not only lead your business, but lead your life.
That
Because a lot of people are going through their life half asleep as well.
I would agree with that. I would agree with
Yeah.
that for sure. So as we wrap up, so let's say I'm a dentist, I'm stressed out of my mind, mental health is suffering, and yeah, my practice has a degree of success. So, all right, so Brandi, how much is it going to cost me? And how much time is this going to take? And I'm sure it's relative to the situation, but like in general, what's the engagement look like from me as a dentist to you as I want to say like therapist? But you have a lot of operational knowledge in
Mm-hmm.
dentistry and a lot of like, best practices of operationalizing things. But anyways, so how much is it going to cost me? How much time is it going to take for you to fix me?
Yeah, I don't know if I can pay you. That might cost you a whole lot. I don't know. But yeah, no, I was gonna say one of my best clients and favorite humans actually said to me recently. He said, "The thing I love about you the most is you're a dental coach, and we don't always have to talk about dentistry." So he really, really appreciates that I know a lot about the industry and I know about his line of work, but it's not the basis of all of our conversations. Yeah, and honestly, I know you probably don't want this answer, but I do see myself as sort of a boutique business. So everything is really customizable. It's high intimacy. And what I mean by that is at a minimum, I talk to people once a week, sometimes a few times a week, depending on I have someone that I work with that likes to start their week with me and end their week with me. So we're checking in pretty regularly, texting in between. So if there's that kind of level of support, because I really help him get his mindset, where he wants it to be throughout the week. And so it's just, we design, and that's one of the things that, I practice what I preach because I want to customize it where you're bought into and you feel as if you're part of the plan. Like, what do you want? Of course, I'm not going to talk to somebody once a month typically to start, because that doesn't really work out. We're not going to really get to do the work we need to do once a month. But, starting out, we have a pretty good cadence, and it's usually over, video or phone, do practice visits, come out and see you if that's something that you want as well, to just like be with you in person, meet the team, get to really get under the hood of the business. Those are all options as well. And yeah, we typically start out at a minimum of 6 months. Usually people go a full year, and then we keep going after that. And I know you don't like this
All right.
answer, but the prices range, honestly,
I know. I don't love this
depending
answer.
depending on what
All
they
right.
want.
20, 26 weeks, and with meeting them once a week as a minimum is kind of what I'm hearing. No pricing guidance. I know it's
Gosh,
relative for
well,
sure.
yeah, I guess depending on what they want. So usually it could be anywhere from 10,000 for like a 6 month type thing. And then it could go from there, depending on how the level of involvement and intimacy. And then also if I'm working with team, if there's a practice visit in there or something like that, that all goes into it as well. Yeah.
What would cause you to tell a client, like, this isn't going to work for us? We should stop the engagement, right? Because my guess is you've had some scenarios where they're not investing, but like, what's sort of like, so there's the financial commitment, but what's like the time and like intentionality commitment that you're looking for in order for this to work and be
Yeah.
effective?
Well, they gotta want to do the work. They need to show up, and they have to be open to taking a look at themselves. I've been at this so long that I have a really good radar for people that I'm not interested in working with. So I'm very select in who I actually take on to work with. And if during some of those preliminary calls, and initially when I meet with somebody, we have at least one call, sometimes it's 3 or 4 calls that we have just to get to know each other and really get to see what they want to create together. And I can very quickly see if it's going to work or not work. And if it doesn't, I'll suggest, alternatives for them that I think would be a better fit. But for me, I'm very selective in who I work with. And I've had 100% success rate so far on how that's been going.
So
So once they get started, they're good. Yeah.
you do a good job screening them to make sure it's a good fit and a good match.
Yeah, because it's got to be, it's got to be mutual. And I don't want to work with anybody that's not having a good time either, or they're not getting something from it. So if they don't resonate with me, it's not fun for me either. I don't live in the place of scarcity where I'm just going to work with whoever wants to try to take a shot at it. I'm pretty serious about what I do. I'm incredibly passionate about what I do. I know the work that I do changes lives and transforms lives and has a major trickle down effect. I think the impact of the work I do with clients is pretty profound. So I don't take it lightly. I take it very, very seriously, actually. And I'm very committed to it. And you get all of me, and you get my whole heart and everything I have behind your success. So to me, it's an investment as well. So I take it pretty seriously. So I screen pretty well.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, Brandi, thank you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And if
Me
you're a
too.
doctor out there struggling with stress, mental health, just operating your practice better, Brandi's here to help. So we'll put some links and stuff in the description, and she's there for you. Thank you, Brandi.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob.